Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Lights Out Vavel F1 podcast. We're back a week after Portugal, which happened at the weekend, the Portuguese Grand Prix on the roller coaster track, which was Portimao, ups, downs, left, right, flying crest, everything. It had it all, apart from a decent race. I think we can probably say, I again, as I said in the first episode, that I haven't been able to watch it live because I've been out refereeing and stuff. So I come back and kind of look forwards to watching the highlights. I came back to watch the Imola highlights 2 or 3 weeks ago and quite enjoyed it. And then I sat there watching the Portuguese Grand Prix highlights, and I have to say I nearly fell asleep. Joining me to talk about what wasn't really much of a race is Callum Owen and Callum McAvoy. Joshua isn't here this week. I'm sure he'll be back with us next week or in the near future. He's got other commitments tonight. So just the three of us, me and two Callums. So this could get pretty confusing, but we're going to give it a good shot. Let's talk about the race first of all. Callum M. What did you make of it? Did you think it was any more exciting than I've made it out to be, or was it just a very boring race, like I said?
I mean, it wasn't terrible. Like, it wasn't like nothing happened.
You've seen worse.
Like, oh, absolutely. Like, France 2019 was like a low point for Formula One, just one of the dullest races ever. It wasn't anywhere near that, but yeah, it was kind of formulaic. We had sort of the opening 10, 15 laps of all the chaos. It was a safety car, obviously, and the restart and the fallout from that. But yeah, after that, everyone kind of just held position, really. Wasn't too interesting, but to be fair, we've had two really exciting races to start the season with, so we were due a dull race pretty soon. So
I think we'd be pretty unrealistic to expect 23 incident-packed races or however many it is throughout the season. Callum, do you kind of agree with that? Do you think, let's just kind of, that race has kind of brought us back down to earth a little bit?
Yeah, I think it was. And the main problem is we had two great races to start the season. So when you have a race that maybe isn't as action-packed as Bahrain or Imola, it's going to seem like a bad race. I don't think it was. I think the first 20 laps had all of the action, which I don't think helped the race's case. But I think it was still good. Still had moments. I don't think it was a brilliant race, but I don't think it's the end of the world. I still think we're going to get good racing. I think it was a very so-so race.
Cool. So let's get straight into it then. I probably agree with Callum there, actually saying kind of all the action happened in the first 20 laps, which makes you forget about, the rest that happened. You kind of forget about that first 20 laps and throughout the rest of the race, which is probably why I've made it come across maybe a little bit more boring than it probably was. So you're probably right there, Callum. Anyway, let's get back into it. We're going to have a look at what we said this time last week when we made our predictions for the Portuguese Grand Prix. We all gave our podium and some of our wild predictions, which have given us some very good talking points. I think it very much has to be said. We'll start with Joshua, who's not here this week. He's gone for a Hamilton win with Verstappen in second. I mean, he didn't actually say who his top three were. I just listened back to it. He said Hamilton and Verstappen will fight it out, and then didn't really give a third. But he said Ricciardo would do better than Norris, and he clearly didn't. Callum, what did you make of what was a very disappointing qualifying for Daniel Ricciardo? And I suppose he did a bit better in the race. I think did he bring it home in P9, something like that in the end? But what did you make of Daniel Ricciardo's weekend?
P9, decent result when you consider started P16. He summed it up perfectly with, it was grim. It was a poor qualifying performance from someone who struggled to adapt to McLaren's car. But the fight back to P9 was good. Could have had more if he wasn't sort of done by Fernando Alonso at the end of the race. But in considering where he starts, no, it's a good result. In the scheme of things, not the result he'd hoped for, but still positive, showing you can overtake in a new car, which is always good.
Yeah, and Callum M, obviously, Joshua also said that Lance Stroll would finish in the top 5. I am just trying to find where he finished. I don't think it was anywhere near the top 5. The Astons finished in the bottom half of the order, didn't they? So what did you make of Lance Stroll's weekend and Aston Martin's weekend overall, which was pretty poor? And obviously, I'll hold my hands up with my Sebastian Vettel prediction, which went very, very wrong. I'm just looking now. Sebastian Vettel finishing 10th, he scored points. I said he would score points. And he did. Is that
10th in qualifying, wasn't it?
10th in qualifying, so I've got that confirmed.
13th in the race.
Oh,
yeah,
Lord.
so there we go. I sort of said he was we'll say he scored points because he finished in the top 10. I mean, he didn't score points. I'm just trying to kind of save myself. But back to the actual question, Callum. What did you make of Aston Martin's weekend overall?
Just utterly terrible. I have no idea what's gone wrong with them. It's 13th for Vettel, I think 14th for Stroll. So they've just gone backwards. I don't understand. Like we was chatting with you guys just before we started recording, and I was saying I saw something on Twitter. It's obviously a joke saying that Aston Martin are under investigation for copying Williams's car. As a joke all the time, they've copied Mercedes in the past. But yeah, it's the only logical explanation, surely, at this point. Like, don't know why they've gone backwards. They've obviously changed something on the car. I don't think it's all Vettel or Stroll's fault. They're good drivers, obviously. So, I don't know, maybe they'll improve as the season goes on, but this is an awful start. Vettel's one of 7 drivers not to score points so far in the opening 3 races, so not good.
Yeah, I was being pretty stupid there. I was looking at the because I was quickly trying to find the result of the race while I was asking the question at the same time, and I found the 2020 results, and he came 10th in 2020, and obviously this year he was 13th or 14th for Aston Martin. So I really got my hopes up there. I was like, I'm pretty sure Vettel didn't score points, and then I obviously realised, yeah, I've got the wrong race. Callum Owen, then we'll come to your predictions. You agreed with me. You said Verstappen followed by Hamilton, and then Bottas in third. What did you make of that Verstappen-Hamilton fight? There wasn't really much of a fight between the two of them. It was just that fantastic overtake from Lewis Hamilton that we saw into turn 1 to get Verstappen.
I mean, it was going to always be a bit of a 50-50 shot. I think Portimao sums up what this season will hopefully be. It'll be a battle between which car is strongest on what weekend. And I think just this weekend it was Mercedes. I think they seem to have the extra power down the straight and just seem to be a little bit more confident in a track that's very wind affected. I mean, we saw Verstappen lose pole because he had an oversteer due to the wind coming out of turn 4. So I think Verstappen was a fair shout. I just think Mercedes was stronger on the weekend. I think that's really all there is to it.
Do you think that's how it's going to carry on throughout the season? We could just see that this kind of alternating between, or just one of them's going to be, stronger than the other, and then the next week one's going to be stronger. Red Bull are going to be stronger than Mercedes, then Mercedes stronger than Red Bull. Do you think that's kind of how it's going to be through the season, or do you think maybe Mercedes might look stronger, but Red Bull may just pip them in the race, with a bit of luck or a bit of good strategic planning, I guess?
Well, I mean, I certainly hope it's a case of each race is different, and I do think that will be the case. I think there'll be tracks that Red Bull are stronger at, tracks that Mercedes are stronger at, and that happens historically anyway, even in seasons where it isn't quite as tight. So I think even now that it's a tighter season, we could see more sort of switching between who is the strongest car at certain points.
And then your final prediction that you made, Callum, is you said that Esteban Ocon would out-qualify Fernando Alonso, and you absolutely smashed that out of the park with Ocon qualifying, I think it was 6th, is that right? Yeah, 6th, and then Fernando Alonso down in 13th. So he absolutely smashed him out of the park. Callum M, the other prediction that Callum O made, this is really confusing, isn't it? The other prediction that he made was that Perez would come in... Perez would come in 5th. And there would be a McLaren or a Ferrari between them. Obviously, Perez came. I'm flicking between race and qualifying result here. Perez came 4th. Yeah, that's where I thought he came. But how good was it to see him on that long stint on the mediums at the start of the race? Going well into the race to, it just shows how good he is at tyre management. Isn't it?
Yeah, 55 laps or so on one set of tyres is ridiculous, especially on the tyres he started on as well, which I think was the most remarkable thing. Yeah, it's probably, as you mentioned, it's kind of the strongest, one of the strongest things that Perez is good at is his tyre management. While it was disappointing that he couldn't do more with it, I mean, at the end of the day, this is what Red Bull signed him for, to have a driver who would finish 4th or 3rd for every race. So yeah, he's doing his job well. I think he's settling more and more. You've seen it throughout the 3 races now. He's grown more and more into that car. So, looking good for him.
And you predicted him to win the race this time last week, which obviously didn't happen. You said at the time you were being kind of a man can dream sort of thing. But do you think that maybe Perez can be used as kind of, a number two driver and maybe kind of a bit of a tactic in terms of the way he can long out the tyres? Do you think, that could maybe give Red Bull a little bit of an advantage in terms of getting Max the World Championship and getting themselves the Constructors' Championship?
Oh yeah, he's definitely like wingman status in the same way that Bottas is wingman status at Mercedes. Which I don't think he'll mind. I think if he gets the chances to win races or get on the podium, he'll take that. So yeah, I think Red Bull could definitely use. I think they tried to use and they tried to say, oh, go on a longer stint and you can hold up Hamilton, and it didn't work at all. But you could see what Red Bull were trying to do, and I'm sure we'll see it a few more times this season.
And I think you're right. I think he's definitely a tool that Red Bull will be able to kind of use to their advantage, and I think it definitely could make a difference. Towards the end of the season, especially if there's permutations on the last few races. The amount of points needed to win a championship. I think Perez and Bottas as well, but obviously we know how good Perez is with the tyres, and he could definitely be used to Red Bull's advantage. Callum, the other prediction you made was that George Russell was going to score points. I'm going to come back to Callum Owen on this. The Williams, it looked fantastic in qualifying. He was really close to getting into Q3, George Russell. But what happened in the race?
I think him and Nicholas Latifi, and I mean the Williams team as a whole, did allude to the fact that it was a very wind-sensitive, unpredictable car in testing. So I don't think it was any surprise that when the conditions were right, it was a quick car. But when the conditions were wrong, it was a horrible car to drive. And Russell said on his team radio, it was like driving the 2019 Williams, which is one of the worst cars we've seen for a while. It was unlucky. He showed again he's an excellent qualifier. And we all know he's a great driver. He just needs the right equipment, which he hasn't had. Obviously, bar his one-off appearance from Mercedes, he hasn't had yet. So I think it will come. I think he was unlucky just with the conditions and the car he's driving on Sunday. But I think he still showed across the weekend as a whole, he had an excellent Friday as well in practice, just how good of a driver he is.
And then this brings me back to you, Callum. Obviously, Mick Schumacher got past Nicholas Latifi and I think managed to finish the race ahead of him in the end. Is that a step forward for Haas, or is that just the fact that Williams were just poor, or is it that this Haas car, although they're not bringing upgrades, that maybe Mick Schumacher's getting a bit better and getting a bit more confidence in that car?
Oh, it's a huge step, really. Like, the Haas is the worst car on the grid. Like, there's no question of that now. They've qualified last and second to last in all the Grand Prix, if I'm not mistaken. So I think to finish ahead of anyone's quite a good achievement. And you've got to put it in context that Schumacher and Mazepin are both rookies as well. So this is all about just getting experience in the car. So yeah, I think finishing ahead of Latifi is a great achievement for Mick. Yeah.
And Callum, in the last point on this, do you think that says anything about Latifi as a driver, or do you think it's just the fact that this Williams just isn't good enough in those kind of conditions?
I think it says more about Mick Schumacher's a good driver, and he's getting to grips with his car, which is kind of all that you can ask of him this year in the car that he's in.
Yeah,
I think the move came from a Latifi lockup, so I think obviously that benefited Schumacher. I think it's just the right conditions the wrong conditions for Williams, so the right conditions for Haas overtaking the Williams, and just Mick Schumacher getting better and better as he goes on.
And I'll admit, I made a bit of a fool of myself with Mick Schumacher's teammate Nikita Mazepin. Obviously, we didn't see. I don't think we saw a single spin from him. I think he went to the gravel a few times, but I don't think he sent it round and did a 180 or anything. But we did see him kind of turn in on Perez when Perez was about to lap him, and he kind of apologised on the radio. And somebody on Twitter or TikTok or something like that has done a good little team radio kind of message. So it's Mazepin kind of apologising. Sorry, I think I kind of blocked Checo there, and his engineer's like, "Yeah, fine, get on with it. Focus, push." And then Gunther Steiner comes on the radio and he's like, "Enough! This is enough!" And we think it's a clip from one of the Drive to Survive episodes. So go and find it on Twitter. That's a a funny little clip. And I'm sure if that would have happened, Mazepin's reaction probably wouldn't have been too kind back towards Gunther Steiner. And the only thing that I do want to talk about, which I should have mentioned beforehand before we started coming on, was the only incident that happened in the race, which was between the two Alfa Romeos. And it was obviously Kimi Raikkonen went into the back of Antonio Giovinazzi and pretty much lost his front wing. Do you think maybe, Callum M, that Kimi we're starting to see that Kimi might be a little bit rusty, or do you think it was just a rare mistake from an experienced driver?
I think it's just a rare mistake, to be honest. I mean, he said afterwards that he was looking down his steering wheel trying to adjust something and then wasn't expecting the car to be as quick as it was in the straight, and just ran into the back of Giovinazzi. So just one of those things. We've heard it before from drivers, trying to adjust something on the steering wheel and not concentrating and losing the back end or whatnot. So just one of those things. I know there's this agenda that Raikkonen's an old man and he needs to retire. But I think he's still a decent driver at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a lot said now that Formula One drivers are like driving a computer rather than actually driving a car with all the kind of adjustments and stuff like that you've got to make. So it's definitely maybe a little bit of a talking point. But I think, yeah, maybe I suppose if that happens more often, we could start to see that maybe he's getting a little bit old and things like that. But it's the first time he's made a mistake in years from that I can remember. So I think that's a fair point you make. The only bit of news to come out of Formula One this week is that Romain Grosjean, and it came out this morning, is going to be taking hold of the Mercedes. I think it's last year's Mercedes in the French at the French Grand Prix. It will be like a recreation kind of drive around the track. Callum, I think you know a bit more about it than I do, clearly. Galamo, that is. Just tell us kind of about what that's going to be, if you know any more than I do.
Yeah, so it's the Mercedes W10. So if I'm not mistaken, the 2019 car. And he's just, from what I've read, it's going to be a demonstration event in front of the fans. Obviously, Grosjean's home Grand Prix would be the French Grand Prix. So they'll do a demonstration over the weekend in front of the fans before a test day on Tuesday, just to allow Grosjean that final send-off that he never really got. Because you never want a driver to end his F1 career on fire. Almost. Well, not almost, on fire. And I think when it happened, Toto Wolff said if Grosjean wasn't offered a test by anyone else, he would allow him to test an old Mercedes just to give him the closure. And I think that's what's happening. I think it's a good move from Mercedes. I think it's great from Grosjean. Gets to run what was a championship-winning car, a car that would have been lapping him in that 2019 season. So it's an excellent move all round.
And Callum M, I think it just kind of shows that extra bit of class that Mercedes have got about them and why they're so successful, doesn't it?
Oh, of course, yeah. It's just a lovely thing to see, really. There's not much more to say about it. It's just a lovely gesture, and Grosjean's had a very underrated F1 career. Had a lot of good early stuff with Lotus, so yeah, it'd be great to see him out one more time.
And I just want to touch on that crash, just very, very quickly. I don't want to make it kind of all about the crash, because it's going to be great to see him back in a Formula One car, and I'm sure we'll see videos on YouTube of him going around and stuff like that. But obviously, we only started the podcast at the start of this season, so we haven't ever actually spoken about the crash. Just first to you, Callum, what did you think when it happened? What was going through your mind, and how did you where were you, and how did you react to it?
I mean, it was surreal. I was watching it from my room at uni, and you saw that shot on the run up to turn 4 at Bahrain. They have that long shot for the straight, and you saw a car spin off, and you thought, obviously the normal reaction seeing car spin off, you think, oh, so you've seen a car gone, and you don't really think an awful lot of it, especially when it's towards the back, and then almost out of nowhere, this giant fireball, and I don't know. I think I'd probably share the same reaction as most people. I saw that and thought, whoever that is dead. There's no chance that coming out of that, it was a massive explosion. So it was almost, when we saw that Grosjean was out, Grosjean was out of the car, it was shocking. I had no idea that he'd survived that. I mean, I even had my roommates who don't watch Formula One running in to come, because they knew I'd be watching it, to come in and look at it and go, I've seen this on Twitter. And that's just how big it was.
Yeah. And Callum M, a bit of a different perspective. I'm assuming you watched the latest season of the Netflix series Drive to Survive. Personally, I think they covered it, fantastically. Some of the different camera angles that we saw of it that kind of showed it, gave us a bit more of a clearer picture of how he actually got out the car. We obviously had the interview with Sky where he described it, but that Netflix documentary just captured it perfectly, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the interesting things they did is that the incident itself only lasted 30 seconds or so, from him crashing to getting out the car, 30 seconds a minute. But they really sort of panned it out, so it sort of lasted almost 5 minutes or something, which is kind of how we all felt. It kind of seemed like a moment that lasted forever, because we just didn't know if he was okay and what happened. And it's so shocking to see a crash like that in modern Formula One. So yeah, I thought they did a perfect job of capturing it.
And the only thing I'll add to that is kind of where I was, because Callum you mentioned you were at uni. I assume, Callum, you were either there or at home, watching the race live. I was actually where I can't even remember where I was, but wherever I was, I was leaving at 2:00, which was obviously when the race started. And I was coming home, and I would have done the usual, just watch the highlights later on. And I came home, and there was just a red flag, and I was like, oh, great, there's a red flag. I'll be able to kind of, see the rest of the race. It was on lap 1, wasn't it, that it happened? So I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to see the full Grand Prix. And then I obviously went onto Twitter, because they weren't showing the replays at the time on the TV coverage. I went onto Twitter and saw what happened. I was like, oh my God, sort of thing. The same reaction as what kind of you guys had. I probably didn't have that initial shock of thinking, he's dead, because kind of by the time I got home, it was 2:30, 2:45, something like that, and it was kind of confirmed that he was okay. And I saw the replay, and I was just like, just stunned by what could have happened. But I think we'll probably all join him in wishing, obviously, a speedy recovery, which he's obviously still going to be going on. He's still going to be regaining that fitness and all that stuff. I think he's driving in, I think it's IndyCar. Is he driving in this year? And obviously he's going to get that chance in the Mercedes, which, like I said, is fantastic from Mercedes, fantastic for him. And I can't wait to kind of see all the coverage that surrounds it, and how emotional he's going to be, and all that kind of stuff. So fair play to Mercedes. As much as I don't particularly like either of the drivers, I quite like you as a team. So yeah, fair play to them. Coming up, we have Spain next. We go to Barcelona. I think we were probably all quite relieved at the start of the season when it was announced that they wouldn't be testing in Barcelona, just because of how rubbish of a track it is. Callum M, what are you expecting from this weekend in terms of the race? Do you think we're just going to get maybe not a repeat of Portugal, but something that's not going to be too entertaining on a pretty boring track where, thinking about it, there's only really one place to overtake, and that's at the bottom of the start-finish straight?
I'm looking forward to my 2-hour Sunday nap now, because it's going to be more entertaining to have that than watch this Grand Prix. You said that, Spain, the Barcelona circuit is a perfect testing ground. It's a good all-round track. It's got a mixture of everything, but that unfortunately means it's a terrible track to go racing on. It's awful. There hasn't been a good Spanish Grand Prix since Maldonado won, and that was nearly 10 years ago now. So I'm really annoyed that they brought it back on the calendar. I don't think anyone likes it now. It's one of the first circuits that, if you gave me free reign over Formula One, I would ditch instantly.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of good Spanish support through Sainz and Alonso, but terrible track.
And I think that the thing for me is, obviously, I mentioned before we came on that I watch as much as I can of Formula 2 and Formula 3. And any track that they go to, they always seem to make a decent race out of it, because they're young drivers fighting for their careers. They're proper, elbows out. But I just remember last year watching the Formula 2 race, and it was just, it was a procession. And you never see that in Formula 2 or Formula 3. So it's a shame. But Callum, I want to ask you, Callum O, what do you think the track's like to drive? I assume you played the F1 game. It's obviously got a mixture of straight, slow, fast, and medium speed corners. Do you think the drivers enjoy going there?
I mean, as I know they talk about it as a testing track, that it's quite a demanding track. It's got every sort of corner. I think, as in terms of a racetrack, they sort of had maybe 2 opportunities to overtake. Obviously, as you mentioned, down to turn 1 and then into that hard braking zone at turn 10, but they've cut that now. It's a swooping corner. It was Lando Norris that came out and said they've got rid of an overtaking opportunity at a track that has none. So I don't know what they expect. It's I mean, it's a good enough track, but not for racing. And I think an idea I think they could benefit from it was they tested it. It used to be testing at Jerez, but it was never on the F1 calendar. It wasn't on the F1 calendar at the time of testing. And I'd love to see the same happen with Barcelona. As someone that isn't a fan of the circuit, test there but don't race there. And this little bit of me is optimistic that because they didn't test there this year, they've got less data on it, could lead to a better race. However, I'm not optimistic enough to say it'll be a good race.
Well, we'll come into our predictions in just a minute, but we've kind of all three of us maybe agreed that we'd quite happily see it removed from the calendar or test there and don't race there. Callum M, I'm really going to put you on the spot, so I apologise. I'm going to do this to you as well, Callum, so you've got a bit of time to think. But if we ditch that, is there a track that we don't have on the calendars currently that you would like to see it replaced by? I'm going to steal Mugello before anybody else gets in there.
Oh, that is a great question and one that deserves a whole hour, but we don't have that, unfortunately. The obvious answer used to be Turkey, because it was such a great track, but obviously now that is back on the calendar because the Canadian Grand Prix dropped out. I mean, I'm a sucker for Brands Hatch. It's one of the nearest circuits to where I'm based.
No.
It's a great circuit. Probably not probably not for Formula One anymore, sadly. No. It's where else could we go that's currently like available to go to?
Somewhere in Africa, maybe. I mean, I don't know any African circuits, but
no. Oh, I'd love to. I always like Malaysia. I'd love to go back there. That's
yeah.
That's
not a bad venue.
That's my realistic pick. Yeah.
And Callum O, what about you? If there's a track that you'd like to see Spain replaced with, have you got any ideas in mind?
Well, I was between two. Callum picking Malaysia sort of rules it out for me. Go Hockenheim in Germany. I always liked. I always thought the German Grand Prix were always a solid race. If you're looking, you mentioned an African race, which is a brilliant idea. Kyalami, South Africa. I haven't got the biggest knowledge of it, but I used to race there, and there's a lot of calls to go back there. So I think it would be a natural sort of fit to just replace it. But if I've got to go with a track I've got knowledge of, it'd have to be Hockenheimring in Germany.
I've just gone to Wikipedia list of Formula One circuits, and it's got places like Aintree, Portimao on there, which we obviously go to. There's a couple in Portugal, Mexico we go to. So, but there's kind of plenty of options. Argentina is one that we haven't been to in quite a long time, since 1988. In 1998 is the last time they went there. I mean, I've no idea what the track's like. I'm just saying that because it's on Wikipedia. But yeah, Brands Hatch has come up on there. We've not been there since 1986, Callum M, which probably says everything you need to know about Brands Hatch.
Hey. A great place to watch racing. I'll vouch for it.
How often have you been to Brands Hatch and kind of watched a race there? This is completely off topic, but
I want to say I've been there 3 or 4 times to watch things. When they're 2 years ago, I'd watched the DTM, which is the big German touring cars. They were very good around there, but it's facility wise, it probably can't cope with Formula One at the moment. So.
Fair enough. I'm probably the luckiest in the fact that I live in Northamptonshire. So Silverstone is just 20 minutes down the road. So, I usually go to obviously the Formula One, WEC I'll sometimes go to, and that's pretty much it actually. So I don't really go to kind of varying things at Silverstone, despite it being on my doorstep. Zolder is another one that's just come up in Belgium, which is a track that I don't particularly mind, to be fair, but 1984 was the last time I went there. Anyway, let's get back on topic, back to 2021 Formula One. We're going to make our predictions for this weekend that we can talk about next week or the week after, whenever we're going to be back. For Barcelona, obviously we've all said we think we're going to get a pretty rubbish race. Callum Owen, let's start with your podium finishes, please.
Well, it's tough. Will it be a Red Bull or a Mercedes weekend? With the similarities it has to Portimao, and historically the fact Mercedes tend to win there, I'll go with Lewis Hamilton to win, and I'll go with Valtteri Bottas in second. I know it's just a track that Mercedes have loved previous years, and they ran away with it last year. So I'll go over Mercedes 1-2, Hamilton leading, with Max Verstappen in third.
Cool. And Callum M, your predictions, your podium for this weekend as well, please.
Second time's the charm. Sergio Perez is going to win this weekend. I can feel it now. I think the warmer conditions don't tend to suit Mercedes, so I think Red Bull are kind of on level terms now. I think they'll just have the edge this weekend. And yeah, I fancy Sergio to do it. Why not? He's improving every week, as we said. So yeah, I think he'll win. Verstappen second and Lewis Hamilton third.
I've gone with a Red Bull dominant weekend as well. I've kind of agreed with you. I've gone with Verstappen and Perez to make the top two, and then Hamilton third. Joshua said last week he's not convinced by Valtteri Bottas this season, and I think I probably have to agree with him. Although he got pole at the weekend, something is just not quite right. I don't think. But like I said, we're 2 races in. We're going to see a lot more of him, and hopefully he'll get up to speed. Let's start with our wild predictions, or kind of differential predictions. Mine isn't ridiculous. It's not Antonio Giovinazzi. It's not Sebastian Vettel. It's, I think, AlphaTauri have disappointed a little bit this season and have kind of not lived up to expectations. So I think they're going to have a fairly strong weekend and maybe get both cars into the top 10 come 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. Callum O, what do you think is going to be? What's your outside prediction?
It's a proper stab in the dark. A collision between 2 of the top 3. Not one that's going to win the race.
Yes, please.
Just a bit of banging wheels maybe into turn 1. I mean, we saw the Mercedes of Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton collide Spain 5 years ago now on the way to Max Verstappen winning the race. And I'd have no problem if it happened again this weekend. But I feel like it'll be maybe just a little bit of a collision. And it's nothing too extreme, but it's Spain. I don't think you can predict anything too extreme.
I think you're absolutely right. And then Callum M, what's your wild card for the weekend?
I mean, talking of not extreme things happening, my wild card is that there'll be no safety car for the first time this season. I'm not saying that every car's going to finish. That might be a bit optimistic, but I'm going to say there'll be no major incidents. No safety car, no virtual safety car, just a boring old race. Yep. So
we're pretty much all saying that we're going to be sat here in, I think, 2 weeks' time with nothing to talk about, and we'll just be talking about how fantastic a circuit Monaco is, which is when we're going to be here next time on the pod. Joshua, I probably should have got his predictions. I could probably just make some up for him and just say that he thinks Nikita Mazepin's going to win the race or something, just to annoy him. So yeah, we won't do that because I don't want to annoy him. So yeah, thank you very much to the 2 Callums for joining me. Hopefully let's get a decent race in Spain. We're not going to, but just let's have something happen. We need something to talk about. That's why we're here. We need something to write about on the website as well. So yeah, a reminder that we're all writers for Vavel Formula One, vavel.com/motorsports. We're on Twitter as well at F1 Vavel. Thank you to everybody who listens. That's I think where most of our kind of audience come from. So thank you to everyone who listens on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all those good stuff. If you could subscribe to us on YouTube and on those podcast platforms and never miss an episode, that would be awesome. And leave your likes, your 5-star reviews, all that good stuff. Thank you again to 2 Callums for joining me. Next up, we've got a street circuit double header. We go to Monaco on the 20th of May. So we'll be back on the Friday before that. And then we go to Baku, yay, after that, before going to Turkey and then into kind of the summer rounds of France, Austria, Britain. We don't need to know about that yet. But yeah, we'll be back ahead of Monaco and we'll probably just be talking about a rubbish Spanish Grand Prix and how good a circuit Monaco is. And it's going to be great to be back there, isn't it? But we'll get into that next week. Hopefully Joshua will be back with us as well. I'm going to stop waffling on now. Thank you very much to everybody for listening and we'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.